Welcome to your awakening. Please take all as your reality is adjusted.
Hello, hello, hello. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Just let me know in the chat room, yes or no, if you can hear the mic okay, because I've moved it, so I'm not sure if it'll pick up the same usual volume. It looks alright. So anyway, I'll carry on for now. Hello, welcome. Virtual Shamanizing, we made the heavy cookie monster, blah 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 blah. All the usual stuff here on flippingthepyramid.co.uk. Loud and clear, cool, thank you. Long intro. I got distracted this afternoon and was mashing that together. What do you think? Do you think I should carry on with it? Because I could see it, that original track. Is it Everybody Dance Now? CNC Music Factory, I think, isn't it? I can't even remember while I was messing about with it. But yes, I could hear there's loads more opportunity there to overdub some more silliness. Yes, and yeah, it's the 11th of the 4th, 2013, 11th of April. Thursday again. Yes, hello, welcome. Another reason why I thought I'll let that play all the way through, because it's the original. I prefer to use original versions if I can, most of the time. Some reworkings are better than others, but yeah, you know what I mean. But I wanted to let it play all the way through anyway, rather than chop it down shorter. And it helps fill up time, doesn't it? While I'm not rambling and ranting. Yes, let's look at what we're doing before we go running off. I think you get the point of that mashup. Ding dong, the witch is dead. Which witch? The blonde iron witch. The iron blonde witch, however you want to call it. Yeah. And for those people who say don't speak ill of the dead and you shouldn't be celebrating her death and all this kind of stuff, I'd ask you if you have the same opinion. If you, for example, lived under pick dictator's name, if you lived under that person and they died, they passed away from supposedly natural causes, as far as we know, that's not if she's flown off to go and live with Elvis and Marilyn on the Mir space station. You never know, but yes, supposedly natural causes. You sure you wouldn't celebrate? Are you really, really sure you wouldn't celebrate? I don't wish anybody. I don't wish to be nasty or wish ill on anyone or wish death on anyone, but I grew up with the milk snatcher. Let's put it that way. I ran around in the 80s and 90s trying to do all the usual things under the Thatcher regime, and I'm quite glad she's gone. There you go. Make of it whatever you want. I'm glad she's gone. And I think as a simple straw poll, even though the mainstream media is not really covering it in any decent way, in the sense of actual coverage amount of what's going on out there, they are doing some coverage in the sense of the usual kind of pigeonholing and label throwing and propagandizing the audience to believe that anybody who goes out and celebrates or does anything like having a bit of a dance, everybody dance now, because this woman has passed on, is somehow evil and a terrorist, and you should now throw your rotten tomatoes at them and all that usual kind of propaganda demonizing crap. But as a straw poll, just look at the readily available information. If you bother to go online and turn your TV off and stop letting it program you, and instead go and create your own program by picking and choosing what you go and look at, etc. And have a look out there, and there's plenty of little video clips and stuff of people having street parties and dancing. When was the last time ever that you can remember or know of or heard of or read of that number of people of the general UK British citizenry celebrating the death of some politician or, you know, the aristocracy ruling elite plutocracy bloodline members? When was the last time you can remember that? I certainly can't remember it in living memory. Maybe, you know, a generation ago they might know of a few people, but just a simple straw poll. Just look at how many people went yes and had a little dance and maybe, you know, had a few drinks to celebrate. Yes, so yeah, that was my I did put a little video up on my YouTube channel as well, which is basically just me dancing to the Ding Dong song. Yes, Ding Dong Dance Now. I was celebrating, like I said. I grew up and was attempting to become part of adult society when Maggie Thatcher rose to power and was in power and was tearing this country to pieces. And I did consider putting together like more notes and links and stuff like that about various stories to do with Maggie and her legacy, let's put it that way, or the remains of her infection, I would put it that way. And please do not go running off into a box, a label box, saying, oh, you must be a commie then, you're a leftist, you're a socialist, Not at all. I'm just basing it on the general good for the society that I live within. Our society suffered because of the things that she did, the laws that she changed and put into place, the way she treated people, the way she treated the nation, the UK, Great Britain, whatever you want to call it, and our relationships with the rest of the world. So yeah, I thought about doing that, but you know, there is just so much out there at the moment, articles wise. I think here in the UK this is probably one of the most important, unfortunately, you know, in her infamous fashion, because she was infamous as far as I'm concerned. She is infamous, vilely infamous. She generates that much attention. It's quite an important event for the nation as a whole. Yeah, important in different ways for different people, but still nevertheless important because it has such a big news effect, media effect, social and cultural effect, etc. So yeah, I thought there's just no point me putting stuff together like that, 'cause there's plenty out there available. So, as I said, I after catching up with the news and stuff this afternoon, I then got distracted into mashing up that audio, so I didn't put a list of links and stuff together. To give you a general recap, let's see. One of my favourite bone of contention with Maggie Thatcher was her and Reagan basically bringing in the cancerous version of capitalism, which we are now suffering the major effects of. They basically laid the running ground for this out of control gambling casino money. This is ridiculousness. I stumble for words with this because it's just such insanity that has been going on for the last 2 decades. They laid the groundwork for all of this. Disaster capitalism. Go and look up Naomi Wolf, isn't it? Disaster capitalism, that shock doctrine. That's what they set up. because they knew in the global scale of things, the productivity, the manufacturing sector was being shifted eastwards to cheaper labour markets so that they could make it more mechanised. And I mean mechanised in the sense of using humans as robots, not as actually using robots. The original word robot means a human acting almost like a machine. You know, if ever you've worked in big factories on production lines and stuff like that, you've seen the images of it plenty enough. So they knew full well all that manufacturing was going to shift, which means the Western allies, the Western Empire, will be gradually degraded into a third world status almost. I'm not saying this to be denigratory to any particular country or culture or whatever, but you can just study the recent history of South America and see how these very financial, destructive, cancerous methodologies were utilised to fracture and bring down entire countries and put them back into a third world colonial status, where the super wealthy can have nice little secluded and securitized compounds to live within, where they will have a servant for every need to wait on them hand and foot, that they pay dirt poor amount of money, barely subsistence level of earning, and the rest of that country will be a banana republic, basically, in a very simplified fashion. And I personally believe, having, like I said, grown up in that time period where the time I started looking for a job was just as Maggie Thatcher was smashing the country to pieces, destroying all the unions, shutting down all the coal mines and ruining the steel industry and all this extreme privatisation, which basically just means selling off the country's assets to her mates and her blood relatives, and turning it into the global casino marketplace that it is now. Remember, the house always wins. And that's just, just in that rant alone, I've mentioned several things that she did. And of course, I always refer to her as the milk vampire, because she stole my milk. Yes, she had just got into, I don't think it was before she was Prime Minister, but she was a minister. And at that time period when I was still getting to the end of infant school, junior school, yes, she stole my milk. Maybe that explains why I'm a bit mad. I was traumatised as a child. This crazy woman stole my milk. What else can I rant about? Oh yeah, let's mention Pinochet, and as Blue Bus mentioned as well, on Monday night, the Belgrano. That was just, as far as I'm concerned, that was just blatant political game playing. She did that to score points. She did that to make herself a war minister, a war hero, because then she could say, "Our boys did a good job. We give them a good bloody eye. We black-eyed them." Of course, hundreds of sailors died in that one event. And of course, let's not forget how she encouraged the manipulation of various terrorist groups, the IRA and other groups abroad as well, in the Middle East, and encouraged radicalised speakers and clerics, activists, to come and stay in this country, where they would be offered safe haven while they were allowed to continue to spread their hatred and incite violence in their home countries, etc., etc. Yes, Maggie's Boys was a nickname for the SAS at that time, during the height of the troubles in Ireland and the bombings in Birmingham, etc., etc. Yeah, there's a wealth of information out there if you want to go and look at that kind of stuff. When people ask about, you really believe that our own governments work hand in hand with terrorist groups? Yeah, of course they do. And they infiltrate them. And at one stage in the situation in Ireland, it got to a point where there was more infiltrators making up the head of the main army head group of the IRA. More of them were infiltrators from the SAS and MI6 and MI5, etc. All the acronym soup boys. There was more of them than there were genuine IRA. So yes, do they actually, instigate events? Again, there is a paper trail of evidence there, documented by various eyewitnesses, etc., that they most definitely did instigate terrorist events, murders. Yeah, the info is out there. You can go and find it if you want to. So, will I not dance a dance of joy because this entity has moved on, where she can no longer, hopefully, let's not run off down the whole potential of dark magic and the Illuminati rituals in deep dungeons. But that just then as well links me to, who did she know? Who did she have for dinner every year? Who did she rub shoulders with? Who is she related to? Where does her family come from? Etc, etc. So many links and ties. Just further puts the nail in the donkey's ass of just how much this country is still ruled and dominated. And it's not just this country, obviously, because its tentacles spread out into the great empire, the Ingsoc Empire. Yes, enough about her. As a few people have said in the past couple of days, we don't need to expend any energy on her and her legacy. We're pretty certain it was a nasty legacy, and we're getting a good jolt of it at the moment. What created the housing bubble? What created the housing bubble in the first place in the 90s? Who encouraged the ideology of greed? Greed became good, and everybody was out for themselves. Everybody was buying to let. Selling off the council houses, yeah, great for one generation, the generation that had the opportunity to buy them. But when they then cut down and near enough stopped all new building of council houses and building new housing estates, etc., etc. So in other words, it only benefited one generation. And from that point on, it became a privatised industry where the only people it benefits is the landowners, the people who own the property, buy-to-lets. And isn't it funny how, at approximately the same time, early 90s it began really, didn't it? We had this rise of the cultural meme of the property ladder. You had programmes like Location, Location, Location. I think that started late 90s, was it? But all these kind of programs that encouraged people to, you too could climb the property ladder, you too could buy one home, and within a few years you could be buying a home for £1 million by constantly stepping up that property ladder. And they actively encouraged the housing boom, while all the time, and more and more this information is coming out now, more and more evidence and paper trail is coming to light about how the banks and these oligarchs, these kleptocrats, plutocrats, etc., the ruling aristocracy, how they were hand in glove with each other while whipping up the fury of this new gambling casino financial system, fueled by the supposedly increase in circulating money because of the readily available debt and the housing boom, while they were fiddling the books in the background, using the banks to launder drug money, using derivatives to basically steal money off people. Like I said earlier, when I started ranting that disaster capitalism, cancerous capitalism, the Western nations are slowly being turned into colonial nations. See, this is, for me, that seems to be, I know it's simplifying it a little bit because there are cultural differences, etc., but that is what they are doing to the hinterland, because as Agenda 21 progresses, more and more the important people and the important businesses and functions of the state, the governing body, however, whatever particular form it takes, will be centralised into bigger and bigger cities where they can be fortified and secured. Yeah, as I said, the super wealthy will have more than enough money to be able to afford to live within very secure, gated communities where the level of technology will be so advanced to the rest of the ravening masses. Yes, it's a dystopian future, isn't it? Yeah, before we go running off there. Yeah, anyway, so are we mourning? No, we're dancing. That's what we're doing, dancing. And like I said, you can't believe what's being done on the mainstream media. They're desperately trying to keep it quiet, the fact that people are celebrating. And yes, it is unfortunate that we are in this position where we are celebrating someone's death, but I think the world's much better off without actually physically here. So we should celebrate the fact that we can not succumb to that anymore. Yes, anyway. Sort of linked into this, because, you know, as I do, I like to try and pick links that sort of go in a flow. And this was one of the links that sort of made me think about the whole housing bubble situation that grew out of the late 80s, early 90s, as I say, instigated by Thatcherism and Reaganism, that, as I said earlier, cancerous capitalism. I can't think of a better term to call it, really. This link, which I found from GGN, I think, Global Government News. Yeah, I was watching his update earlier. You find him on YouTube channel on DDarko2012 is his channel name. He does aggregate news collecting from the mainstream and some alternative sites. And I think he does a good job of collecting together stories that follow along certain themes, such as Big Brother or the military-industrial complex, etc. Whatever. Yeah, go and check him out for yourself. But I lifted this link from one of his updates. Find this on theeconomiccollapseblog.com. The tunnel people that live under the streets of America. The reason I plucked this, because there has been other stories in other publications. For example, he links into the Daily Mail article, Daily Fail, we'll come back to them later, and a few others like New York Post, etc. So he's pulling together various different articles to then paint more of a broader picture, so you're getting a bit more information for your book, rather than, well, you know, it's freely available online, so, but it's not just steered from one particular propaganda rag. And this just, like I said, made me think about that whole housing bubble, housing boom situation, and how people were encouraged onto the property ladder by taking on more debt. Take on more debt, get a bigger mortgage so you can get a bigger house, and you can let out the house that you used to live in, then get a bigger mortgage, you get a bigger house, and it just grows and grows and grows. The debt, the mortgage that they owe, just inflates and inflates and inflates. And yes, for those people that do well at the game, they can have a chain of properties behind them which in effect pay for themselves by their rental income, and that's how most landlords start off, really, isn't it? And it is a property ladder, which is a greasy pole if you wish to climb, but it does still remain contained within the whole fiat Ponzi money scheme system, which, lo and behold, is now becoming apparent as it starts to collapse in on its fractional whizzer of black hole self, as its own gravity starts crushing itself. Now, this article is primarily referencing America, but this is not something that's just unique to America. Any of the large cities, any of the big urbanite areas, and certainly some of the older cities like London has got loads of tunnels underneath it, whole sections of old subway train sections, stuff like that. And it's, like I said, same in lots of big cities. But for me, this links into that, showing or giving an example of how that economic collapse is pushing what used to be considered the first world nations, those great, super powerful, we're the greatest on the planet nations, into a third world environment where people will just have to exist in the best ways that they can, and as people do, they will just do whatever needs to be done. So if they've got nowhere else to live except down in a tunnel, they'll go and live in the tunnel because at least it's shelter. The amount of tent cities that are popping up in various places, and what are the homeless numbers at the moment in this country? The bedroom tax is just going to make the situation even worse. I've said this before, and I've tried to get this concept across to people in a way that it doesn't sound extreme, because it can seem extreme that it will get this bad, but they are basically steering us back towards a slum environment similar to the Victorian slums. Now, our building techniques may be different. We may have a big massive book of codes that buildings have to be up to certain specs, and landlords have to have inspections every so many, I think it's 12 months, isn't it? Once a year they have the various inspections done, all this kind of stuff, yes. And they also generate an economic wheel within the system, because you have people to do all those bureaucratic jobs and people to do the inspections, on and on and on it goes. Sub-wheels within sub-wheels. But they're pushing it to a situation where it becomes unavailable to the majority of the people, and you end up with whole sections or whole housing estates, whole estate areas becoming slum areas. And it doesn't take a lot of research to find this stuff out. The TV paints a lovely, lovely picture. They always show you, pictures of nice towns, and towns with flowers in, and little country towns where everybody knows each other. There's a little post office, and it's all very, very BBC, very, very aunty. Whereas you actually try having a walk around the big cities, and even not in the big cities, it's now endemic across the country, and in some places it is very extreme. There are whole sections of towns and cities that are just slums, basically. There might be modern houses, but the level of income, the level of employment, the level of repair and care for those communities is just plummeting. And as I've argued before, and I keep going back to, when it comes to it, people will do what people need to do. So when communities start turning back in on themselves, and it could potentially be in a nasty way, but I hope, I try to encourage, I try to point out, I try to be optimistic to people that it doesn't have to be that way. If you get involved with your community, get to know your neighbours, etc., find out how and why and where and what things you can be involved in, things you can be doing, etc. When communities start turning back to themselves in that manner, then that's only then will they start getting sorted out, and only then will it become the lifeboat that it should be as this economic structure continues to fall apart as the rot gets worse. Yes, I saw your name in the chat room then, Stop the Rot, and it just made me think, rot, perfect word, thank you. Yes, hello to everybody in the chat room. Sorry, as I usually do, I get distracted when I start ranting and I don't really see the chat room much, sorry. So, yeah, don't always expect a response from me if you say something in the chat room, because half the time I'm not looking at it, I'm looking at other windows, etc. Yes, looking out the window. Interesting article, crazy, like I say, pulls together a few other articles. Yeah, various links in there for you to jump off from if you want to go and investigate further. And I think it's a good extra to bring in when jumping off from the topic of the legacy of the Iron Lady. Yeah, more and more people struggling to find somewhere to live or somewhere affordable. Yeah, bedroom tax, ridiculousness. I'm going to play a couple of tracks for you. Yeah, about 10 minutes worth, but same as I usually do. Just break things up, something a bit sort of energetic, shall we put it that way? Yeah, hopefully. Anyway, I will be back in about maybe 12 minutes, or a bit extra. Oh, yes, anyway, I will catch you in a few minutes. Hello, welcome back. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Yes, thank you for indulging with extended music break. Well, extended, it's only a couple of songs with a bit of audio thrown in, a bit of classic George Carlin. They got you by the balls. Asian Dub Foundation, Real Great Britain, and the Prodigy, Their Law. Yes, seemed appropriate to me, but there you go. Like I usually do, pick music that hopefully matches the topic, the mood, the theme, the trend, the thread. Yes, anyway, that's why it's virtual shamanizing. Yeah, did I say what the first song was? Everybody Dance Now, CC Music Factory, yeah. Well, mash-up version with me putting Ding Dong the Witch is Dead on it. Oh dear, yes. Well, there is a bit of an amorphous bit I want to rant about, but I think it would be better to go into this other stuff first, because one will leap into another maybe, although maybe it would be better here to mention the happy slappy fascism, let's call it that. I'm going to ramble a bit about the synchronicities. I've been thinking that I should just do this regular now because it just seems to keep going on. So I'll just do a bit about the synchronicities, which is linked into the rambling about the happy slappy fascism. A new terminology I just mashed up a while ago. I think there's one clip of George Carlin. I think I've got it somewhere. I never thought to dig it out and use it as an example. Where he's in an interview and somebody asks him about like the modern fascist state, or they suggest the idea to him, and he describes it. Modern fascism would not be like the old-fashioned style with jack boots and that kind of uniformed stormtrooper look. Now, instead it will be smiley, happy people with smiley face t-shirts on, pouring at you with their PC agenda notebook of rules of how to interact within the system. Yes, and to me it just seemed a good way of describing it, that happy slappy fascism. We will love you, we will love you, we will love you to death. We will bomb you with our love bombs until you agree to obey the system. Yes, happy slappy fascism and synchronicities. Yes, I'd seen mention in the chat room of a name that I will not name, he that shall not be named. I'm sure some people will know I'm referring to, just simply because I've said it before. But it's interesting that he's attempting to rebrand himself as a filmmaker, an artiste of film noir, I should call it that, sort of, that kind of artistic film documentation. He put up a video recently talking about bridging the gap between subjective and objective in a synchronistic fashion. Like I said, I think about doing this on a regular basis because I tend to talk about trends and memes and topics anyway, and if it is just that I am touching on the zeitgeist when I see these similarities crop up with other people in other on other channels, etc., it could just be that I am just touching on the zeitgeist. But I find it interesting that in his new rebranding, he's attempting to go back to the amorphous environment of the, how shall we put it, the more gooey side of philosophical thought games or thought exercises. And it yet again adds in a synchronistic fashion to whole subject range that a whole load of people have been talking about, is that classic problem of reuniting the material with the immaterial, the sacred with the profane, the spiritual with the physical, the subjective with the objective, the taking the dualist reality, experience, existence that we encounter and trying to get it back into a holistic point of view again, so you're not obsessing on one side or the other, left brain or right brain, yin or yang, you're both, all of it together. So yeah, I find that quite interesting that at the moment he's trying to rebrand himself and people are let's put it this way, people are making sure that his duplicitous nature is known to as many people as possible. But yeah, how many times has he rebranded himself now? And somebody who's prepared to use their own children and other people's children in an ego battle to try and score points in a egotistical fashion, it's just ridiculous. Yeah, anyway, I'm not going to waste energy on him. As I said, he that shall not be named. But following along with that observation of synchronicities, I'm still seeing somewhat a little bit here and there, and I put up a vlog the other day after I did my or was it after or was it before, I can't remember now without looking, but I think it was before I did the dance, the Witch is Dead dance. I put up a vlog called Vlogging in Defensive Egotism, that was it. I have this habit of calling my vlogs vlogging in, as in, or vlogging on, as in the topic I'm going to vlog about is this. And in my poetic fashion, I often try to put it in some kind of descriptive language. But yes, defensive egotism. I could say that I'm not sure why I felt such a need to do that vlog, but then again I probably could at least make some observations about why I felt a need to do that vlog. And in that synchronistic fashion, it had me thinking about, considering, cogitating on the truth hierarchy. In the vlog itself, I talk about how a lot of the time the truth movement, for want of a better description, the usual caveat label, the truth movement is more like the division movement, the divide everyone movement, the let's see what divisions we can create movement. Let's offer people a label and then we can put them in a little box. We can pigeonhole them, compartmentalise them, and polarise them, and isolate them. And it seems to do very well at that, or good portions of it seem to do very well at that. And then, of course, you have the Pied Pipers, for example, he that shall not be named. And in that fashion, as I was saying in the vlog, as I was generally rambling and ranting about, there have been a few things recently, a few threads, a few topics, even word-for-word phrases that I kept seeing cropping up here and there, and it just made me think, hang on a minute, why all these people talking on completely separated podiums, as it were? It's almost like there are all these separate voices standing on a box on Speaker's Corner, as there is, if you've ever been there in London. Yeah, anyone can pull up a milk crate and stand on it and start ranting at the crowd. And when you have several of these people all sort of trying to get the crowd's attention and trying to say that for whatever reason their way is the only way, everybody must come and listen to them, even though if they happen to take a few steps back from the crowd, they will see that all of them are all addressing the crowd, and in the truth movement certainly, and in a large portion of what I would call the good-natured people, you're all talking about basically similar topics, and you're all trying to touch on similar concerns for people, and you're trying to address similar problems and evils in the world. Let's call it that, without allowing ourselves to get dragged into some kind of religiosity. But you're all basically talking about the same stuff. And for me, at the time, after listening to a few different talking heads, regular uploads that I watch, etc., and articles I'd been reading, and there was the one particular upload, it was Max Egan's last upload, Be Active or Abdicate. And as I say in the vlog, go and listen to it if you haven't listened to it, it's worth listening to. But it did leave me with that thought of, or the expanding awareness, shall we put it that way, of envisioning this truth hierarchy. Is it a meritocracy? It is, to a very large degree, certainly because of the fact that you are basically, in effect, competing within the media marketplace, as exampled by many of the major channels, the major websites. You know the names, InfoWars, etc. Those people that do actually generate enough money through their media presence and interactions that they pay people a living wage, pay multiple people a living wage in some examples. And then of course you've got all the various people, the researchers, the commentators who have books out there, the people who write regular articles and earn money from the article. The whole media culture and industry that goes along with it. And even if you're putting stuff out for free, even if you're just sharing your own personal journey in a kind of vlogging fashion, or personal diary fashion, you are in effect competing in that media marketplace. So it is most definitely, to a certain degree and in many senses, a meritocracy, because the customer in a free market fashion will judge you on your products. Yes, some people will always get on board with the charming ones and the snake oil salesmen. People will always get duped. I shouldn't say always, but people will get duped. All that classic good old stuff. But when it comes to the truth movement, and as I said, although we often use the phrase truth movement, I've never seen anyone yet, apart from the 9/11 truth movement. They're the only group in particular that have, assumed that label. They use it as a brand. They use it as a tag name. It's their web address, etc., etc. But other than that, for everybody else, it seems to be a general sort of a general catch-all, just a general label. that people use to say, I am interested in this kind of stuff, which doesn't necessarily follow the mainstream and probably does veer out into the fringe and the heretical, and you know what it's like. That whole rabbit warren opens up underneath you and it just goes in every direction. But within that truth movement, and the spilling over into the other social groups and social movements, charity movements, all that kind of stuff, where people are trying to do good things in the world, or change the world for the better, or care for other people, help other people, etc. There is a commonality that people do things for free, or they do it voluntarily, or they do it at cost. However, we all know the problems of the great machine demands its tithe, and this paper circle, this fiat paper circle exists that you have to add energy into in some manner. So if you are choosing to follow the truth movement, you are most of the time doing it for free, or you're trying to offset the cost in some manner, like some people will have adverts on their website, so it pays for the website hosting, etc. But other than that, it all comes down to your integrity, your information, your knowledge, your skill, and your rhetoric. You are basically selling yourself and the information you have, the knowledge you have. Because you're operating in this virtual media environment. And I'm not talking about people actually creating websites, the actual coding and building of sites, etc. But the passing of information, when people write an article that includes information and knowledge, or even if that's just a perspective, not necessarily individual factual knowledge, but ideas on a concept, etc. They're putting value out there because they are creating something that wasn't there before. As I say, integrity matters in this whole game, whatever this truth movement thing is. So in that respect, plagiarism doesn't tend to wash very well with the consumer. I can't say that's across the board, because as I say, some people will be duped, some people will be ignorant, some people will be lazy, whatever. They won't look further into things, they'll just take it at given value, in the same way that the majority of people sit in front of the TV and accept whatever they're told by the magic goggle box. So your integrity matters quite a lot. And there is a meritocracy, even if it is an unspoken one. Even though I know a lot of people do, there are many people out there that do point out this kind of thing and do actively work against it, work to try and level the playing field, or work to point out the demagogues when they start trying to climb up on top of the box to make themselves some kind of icon. Because in this, and this is why I'm pointing out these synchronicities again, in this holistic perspective, which I keep trying to come back to and get people to take a breath and sit back and try and see as big a picture as they can, and they can deal with, they're all pretty much approaching similar topics with similar solutions, with similar perspectives. Yeah, of course you've got the aberrations and the extremes. That's the rainbow effect, that's the spectrum effect. But on the whole, people are talking about the same kind of root, core ideas and principles, etc. Be active or abdicate. After I had sat and cogitated on it for a bit, considered it for a bit, I thought, well, one thing it straight away makes me think is, what do you mean by abdicate? Because to abdicate something, that means I'm in power or control over something, and you're asking me to give up that ownership of something to somebody else. Give it up to who? Give it up to you? Or give it up to some other person that you tell me to? Or just stick it on the wayside and walk away from it? What do you mean by abdicate? Abdicate just automatically implies a structure, some kind of hierarchy. And the be active, what do you mean by active? What constitutes activity in your value judgment? You want to make it a value judgment, then you need to lay out the rules of your meritocracy and let me know what equals value to you and what doesn't. Because otherwise you are sidelining and judging me based on something I have no knowledge of, which is just as bad as the system itself. Ignorance is no defence of the law. And now I'm nitpicking, and as I say, I'm not unaware of some of the reasons why I probably responded to this. If anything, it's me falling prey to that needing to fit in within that hierarchy, or seeking a role or place within that hierarchy. Maybe looking in a sort of deferential fashion to people that I was turning into icons for whatever reason, or looking up to in that fashion. And this as well, as I say, synchronicities in a synchronistic fashion, because I've still been watching what's going on with the whole OPPT thing, and it all links into that as far as I'm concerned. That's still ongoing. I still feel that there is that subtle peer pressure to get on board or go away, be active or abdicate. Yes, get on board or go away. Get on board or leave us to be in charge. It doesn't work for me. Sorry. Okay, I think that's enough me rambling about that. As I said, rambling, yes, definitely. There was a 6.5 M flare. Was it early this morning or late last night? So there has been a bit of a increase in the soul rads. Enjoy your soul rads. There will be more incoming as the main body of the flare gets to us. I haven't looked at the timetable, but it's usually within 48 hours. So yeah, that's the first big-ish flare, solar flare, there has been for quite a while. So maybe what was supposed to be the picking up back into the higher frequencies of those solar flares, might have actually started now. The solar maximum was supposed to have started a while ago, so maybe it's just our calendar not matching up with the sun again. Yes, anyway, where shall I get to? Yeah, I've ranted about happy slappy fascism. Another one of those mash-up words. The English language has been very carefully crafted and is manipulated in an Orwellian fashion to control thought, to control freedom of thought. And yes, could easily argue with the usual naysayers that you can take that to paranoid extremes. Yes, you can. But it is undeniable that the English language is one of the most restrictive languages on the planet, missing many useful words and phrases and descriptive kind of language in it. Yes, anyway. So I like to take words and mash them together and come up with new uses for them, let's put it that way. And not just complete nonsense words. You can do that if you want. But something that I feel people would understand the meaning of without me having to sit and give them a long explanation about it. So, happy slappy fascism, I think it says what it says. And another one that I've been trying to sow the seeds of out there recently, past few days, week or so, communification. Might sound like a mouthful, it's just community or communication combined with unify or unification or unity. Communification, I think that is, and certainly is for me anyway, this is my attitude to the whole thing, it is that process of increasing the communication between people, of increasing the availability of information to people. And information is not just factual data, it's ideas, concepts, perceptions, and that verges into the purely artistic in an entertainment fashion as well, which is why I like using music. You can go into poetry, spoken word stuff as well if you want to. But it is that use of art as well. It is that communicating between us, because we are under a delusion of separation that separates us one from another. We have this individual experience, this subjective experience, but we are undeniably part of the soup of everything else, and that everything else is largely, or all at its base root, energetic, and everything within it vibrates and rubs up against each other, and resonances pass from one form to another and spread, etc., etc. You know, all the usual kind of way out hippie stuff I like to talk about. But yes, I have rambled enough on that particular rambling. So yeah, playing with words, communification, it is that process of, I feel, unify people more when they're actually talking to each other. Hitting each other with sticks sort of, ends the situation quite rapidly. Yes, anyway, what should I will play you a bit more audio stuff to give you a bit of a break from my wishy-washy rambling, generalised opinion proffering. I'm just doing what I'm doing, folks. I'm being and doing. I don't have a piece of paper that says I'm allowed to be and do, but I am being and doing. So does that mean I contravene the laws of nature? Is the universe going to explode? No, but I'm still being and doing. And you could be too. Stop observing, start participating. Anyway, to sort of in a very, as I like to do, very loose, amorphous, gooey fashion, what I'm going to play next will link into this, and it'll also link back into the Iron Lady as well. But there's a couple of tracks I wanted to play for ages ago, and now is perfect time to play them. So yeah, I'm going to be back in about 10 minutes. I'll play you some audio and some tunes. I'll be back soon. Hello, welcome back again. Yes, it's me, the hairy one again, the hairy cockabud star. This is Virtual Shamanizing. Yes, as I do, playing music breaks at you. Been trying to get into the habit of playing like a chunk of audio and then rambling at you, so it's not just all me droning on, whining in your ear hole with that hypnotic monotone. Yes. Okay then, because we're knocking on with time, so I will get on with it. Slightly changing the topic here, but as I'd like to do, I circle it round or wind it round or take it from that maybe energetic state, confusion maybe, aggressive, destructive, loss of energy, parasitic vampirism of your energy. I try and transmute that, transceive and transmute into something a bit more positive, maybe show a light at the end of the tunnel, as it were. This link I give you might not seem to reflect that, but this is what I do when I'm walking around these pathways. They often go in circles, so you end up coming back to somewhere where you were to start with. You know what I mean. Yeah, this appeared on the Daily Mail, good old Daily Fail. Just waiting for it to open. Yeah, this came out on the 10th, yesterday, and I picked this up from, where did I see this originally? I honestly can't remember now. Some YouTube channel I was watching. Yes, dailymail.co.uk. It's a long title, so bear with me. Fracking causes as much seismic activity as jumping off a ladder. Controversial method for extracting gas is extremely unlikely to trigger an earthquake we would feel. Yes, I've heard and seen, it was on UK Column that I first saw this. Yeah, several people talking about this. This is just, Daily Fail being a good propaganda arm, as it does, trying to reassure the public that the destruction of the subterranean levels, the subterranean geology of the UK is not going to cause earthquakes to worry about. Don't worry about it, folks. Don't worry about it if the ground starts collapsing under your feet. Don't worry about it if your water table becomes infected or gases start leaking up through the ground and poisoning you. Don't worry about it. There's nothing wrong with it. No, it's perfectly okay. And here's a link to the particular UK Column video for those in the chat room if you haven't seen it, if you want to watch it. This was the one, I think they had Ian Crane on there talking about it, about the fracking situation. That's still chugging away in the background here in the UK. They are slowly expanding operations, etc. And here's a link to the Crook Report website. It's crookreport.co.uk. He's got a load of links on there and embedded videos and stuff you can watch. But yeah, there's various links on there about the ongoing situation with the whole fracking. I was going to call it science, but it's just the most, science is inert in that sense. It can be used for good or ill. And investigate fracking for yourself if you're interested, but please don't forget that this is going on here in the UK, even with all the celebrity crap that they throw at us in the news, and with all the stuff going on globally. This stuff is ticking away in your back gardens, in your water table. So, as I say, it does sort of link together, because following on from some of the tracks I play, I didn't name the tracks, did I? Go through them. First one is that Schnordelhand's reading out that classic poem, Rage Against the Dying of the Light. Find him on YouTube. His channel's Snordster at the moment, Snordster, because they keep shutting his channel down, but there you go. Anyway, and a couple of Billy Bragg tracks, Which Side Are You On, and The World Turned Upside Down, which is singing about the diggers. Which Side Are You On, talking about the union, the miners' strikes, etc. And then lastly, The Levellers, Another Man's Cause, which the lyrics sort of sum it up again. And in those lyrics he talks about liking the simple life, and I could now justifiably play Weird Al Yankovic and Amish Paradise. It's not to be unaware of the fact that you don't want to fall into the romanticising of that concept. You've got to look at it a bit more realistically, a bit more practically, pragmatically. How could you actually, return back to the land in this country the way it is at the moment, and in most of the Western countries, the number of population compared to the amount of arable land that is actively being farmed, and then how much you can get from purely natural supply of wild food, etc. All this kind of stuff all adds in to make that situation. We can't do it like the diggers did back in the 17th century. We can't just go and claim enough common land to be able to then grow enough food and supply ourselves, and etc, etc. So in a modern sense, we come back to that situation of prepping for potential disasters, prepping for economic collapse, various kinds of prepping. I wasn't planning to do, a big section on prepping in particular, because it's a good topic to look at for yourself anyway. looking at those kind of survivalist skills even, it may seem extreme to some people that why should you learn how to light a fire if you live in a city where you've got electricity and gas and all the usual mod cons. But it's not just learning about how to do those most basic functions for yourself if you really needed to. It's just learning skills and knowledge that may be useful to you. It's good ammunition in your backpack if you know these simple things. And at the same time, for me, it's that reconnecting to those most basic symbiotic relationships between us and the planet, the environment we live within. If you take away all of the society stuff, all of the buildings and the technology and the resource supply, etc., etc., what would you do? How would you cope? How would you interact with the planet so that you survive and prosper? And it's that spiritual reconnection that goes along with that. I know it's all hippified for those people out there who are not really into that kind of stuff. Nature grows a seed, we plant the seed, all that good stuff. But when it comes down to it, this is what makes life tick over. Food and shelter, water, all the basic needs. So learning how to do some of that stuff, I feel, in my opinion, is valuable. And everybody should do it. Everybody should at least have a go and learn the basic stuff. There's plenty of channels out there, plenty of websites, plenty of information for you to get into that side of things. Steve was on his channel on YouTube. Steve Tagoose was he said he'd start doing some prepping and survivalist type vlogs and stuff like that. But as I say, there are loads of info out there for you to go and find out this kind of stuff. But in that, along that vein, I thought, thinking along that sort of track, that theme of primarily starting from food, and the articles about fracking set me back to when I dug out some old bookmarks that all sort of pretty much follow a similar trend. They're not necessarily just talking about food stuff. There's other topics in that prepping sense as well. Now, these are all from activist posts simply because I had them all together in bookmarks, and I feel that they do all go well together. So anyway, activistpost.com. The first one is top 5 ways to practice non-conformity in the matrix. It's 5 things you could be thinking about, working towards, building up in baby steps, whatever, jumping hole in if you want, That's the thing. The point to me is the fact that it's making it more apparent to people that there are possibilities, there are alternatives, there are avenues, there are directions of information and skills and knowledge that you can go that will hopefully lead us away from this collapsing black hole of this centralising ideology that is rampant across the globe at the moment. If 5 isn't enough for you, here's another one, sort of following a longer theme here, is 25 things. I'll get the proper title for you when it opens on activistpost.com again. 25 things that you should do to get prepared for the coming economic collapse. The first article was talking a bit more in a generalised sense, that the 5 points he's talking about are approaches, considerations, perspectives, not necessarily individual factual data, although he is linking to sites where you can further pursue that. In the second one, goes into a bit more detail, as it says, 25 things that you should get prepared for, and it lists 25 things that you should be thinking about if there is going to be an economic collapse. I shouldn't really say if. It's just a matter of when, what day, and the way the banks are going around Europe at the moment. I don't think it's going to be that far away. But yeah, there's 25 things, and if that's not enough for you, the last link I'll give you this one, again, copy and paste, do more quicker multitasking, and wait for it to open. This one is, again, on activistpost.com, 50 ways to starve the beast. Now, this is a good old classic hippie phrase. Well, I say hippie phrase, you know, it goes back into Judeo-Christian history. It's all tied into the Bible and the Babylon and all that stuff to do with the beast. And this one, she hasn't gone into great, I think it's a she, isn't it? Yeah, Daisy Luther, the author. She hasn't gone into a great detail on each point, but there are 50 points there. So there's a big long list for you to sit and work through if you're actually, you know, taking this stuff seriously as a consideration into how you can effect change in this world, change to hopefully something better. You know, classic cliche of being the change. How do you actually be the change? And this links me back into, as well as I was rambling earlier about that hierarchy. You know, don't get drawn into or lulled into that perception that the Pied Pipers and the snake oil salesmen love to utilise, convincing you that they have access to the truth, and only by buying it through them as a middleman will you get access to it, and you could never possibly do it on your own. Oh no, you have to do it through them. So they're just doing exactly what the system is doing to us, because that's all the system is. It's just a methodology, it's a technique, a bit of technology, a metaphysical technology that allows the people who operate it to benefit greatly at the loss of everybody else at the other end of the machine. And in the same manner of that usurpation, that interloping effect, the snake oil salesman, the con man, does exactly the same thing. I can get it for you folks, I can fix it, I know the answer, you just pay me. Ka-ching! You too can know the truth to the secrets of all life. Just 19.99. Bug off. Buy that and get the secrets of everlasting skin youth, or some other ridiculousness. Yes, anyway. As I said, I was filling out a bit more space this week, because I didn't have, other than the Iron Lady dancing ding-dong dance song, yeah, I didn't have, excuse me, I didn't have lots of links to throw at you. But to reiterate, as I've often done, but yes, to reiterate that there are alternatives, there are ways and means, and when it comes down to it, people will just get on with it and do what needs to be done. So the best thing to do, I feel, is to look towards the ways and means that makes a bit more of a level playing field, let's put it that way, which means dismantling the system bit by bit. And you know, I don't think it's I'm not saying it's impossible, but I don't think it's probable that we will be able to leap in one big go in the, you know, referring to the kind of stuff that he was talking about in Max Egan's last upload, when he's talking about reversing the sequence. You know, they've used a sequence of gradualism to get us to this extremely centralised, controlled Big Brother system set up. So we've got to gradually, hopefully we can do it a bit quicker than they've done it. I don't want it to take 2,000 years. But I think you get the point I'm trying to get across. What is the difference you can make? It can be the simplest thing. It can just be showing some love and gratitude to the people around you. It can be posting stuff online. There's just so many myriad of things. The simplest thing, really, the simplest point to get past is just that realisation that you can actually be doing something. You can be the change. You just have to actually get on with it and do it. I'm not going to give you a value judgment saying that, unless you do this, then you're not being the change. No, I don't think it's fair to expect that or to project that onto other people. Yes, anyway, I think I've rambled enough, and I've got another track I want to play for you before I bugger off. Bookmark those links if you haven't read them or seen them before. Always go back to them. I've got to organise my bookmarks and start putting them into categories and stuff. So many things to do. Yes. Anyway, folks, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for listening. If you got this far, well done. You get a free seed and a bug off. You buy one and you get one free. Shut up, you horrible man. Yes. Yeah, I think I should stop there, otherwise I'll get silly and start rambling. Yeah, I'm going to play you a little audio clip. Just typical hippie stuff. Don't worry about it. It's all just lovey-feely hippie stuff. But there you go. And a classic track, which I'm sure you'll recognise. And yeah, I'm not going to even mention the names because I'm sure everybody will know them as soon as they hear them. Anyway, folks, yes, thank you very much for listening. Take care. I'll rant at you again most likely next week. And check out Blue Bus on Monday night. Check out Dark City Radio. Check out TNS Radio. Check out Critical Mass Radio. Just loads of stuff. Stop saying there's nothing for you to get involved in, because there's lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff. Yes. Anyway. Keep talking, keep evolving.